Is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Little Friday evening hang, fellas, gang. I almost said hang, gang, didn't want to rhyme it. Stumbled over everything, teeing up the line. Not that I pre write these lines or these intros, which I think you can probably tell out there. But welcome, welcome, welcome to a Friday night show. Gonna go like an hour. The last first look show, as we've dubbed it over the last couple of weeks. Going through rankings, going through the top stacks, taking a look specifically at quarterbacks. Quarterbacks kind of drive everything when we're stacking up these teams. So that's how we've done this show a couple times on Friday nights. We missed it last week. I think we did it 2-3 weeks in a row before that. But back in action tonight. So we'll go like an hour looking through, kind of a casual 50,000 foot view of the slate, as they say. But a nice little break. I've had way too much news on today. I've had lots going on out in the world, and just nice to get away from it and get back in and get my head into fantasy sports for a couple minutes. Talk to you guys, hang out a little bit, maybe chat some movies, see what's going on out there. You can see those Halloween movies that I mentioned yesterday a little bit more clearly in this view up above my shoulder over there. Got some solid recommendations up. Not that pile always represents recommendations. I mean, I would recommend most of the movies that are in my collection, of course. Oh, there's Children of the Corn down there. I got to move that up to that pile, too. I'm looking in my background now, spotting different DVDs to move. But yeah, somebody yesterday was asking about like a top 100 movies list or top 50 or whatever the question was. I was thinking about it last night, and the effort that it'll take, because I'll have to write a paragraph about each one. You guys know me, and I'll have to say like why it's in there, because there'll be some weird choices, right? Like Sleepaway Camp, which is up over here somewhere, will probably be on that list. Not that Sleepaway Camp is in of itself a good movie. It's a horrible movie, but it's a great horrible movie. Possibly the all-time best horrible movie. So shit like that's going to be in there, and it's going to need some explanation. So not only do I have to figure out the list, then I got to figure out the explanation. It'll be a labor of love, but one of these days I'll get around to doing that. Looks like Poe DeGen Stoner's here from Garden City, Colorado. Petitioning for a 4:20 start time. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe we'll get tomorrow's marathon started up at 4:20. Go even earlier with that one. Who knows? Probably not. It'll probably be more 5:30, 6 o'clock like it's been over the last couple of weeks. We've got Trey here. Trey's been in from Chipotle. 45-minute wait just to order. Jeez. That does get me intrigued about possibly having a burrito tonight. I'll tell you that much, though. 45 minutes is way too long to wait for Chipotle, though. Is there not like a Qdoba down the street in your town? Most places around here, there's like a Chipotle on one side, Qdoba on the other. Did I see the segment on the GMFB NFL network on Bears quarterback and his dad is an arm wrestler. Kid's a gamer and has moxie. I'm here for all of it. I did see a little bit of buzz, a little bit of like, don't sleep on this kid. I didn't see that specific segment. But I'll Google it now and check it out, of course. But yeah, there were a couple little blurbs when I was looking shit up about him, just saying like, hey, maybe not, maybe don't sleep on him, maybe don't completely write him off. It's gonna be an interesting spot in that game, though. What was my when he came in last week? 10 of 14 for 83, but threw a pick. Undrafted is never a good thing. But yeah, it at least, somewhat intrigues me. It's going to be a situation where there's QBs out on both sides, which is kind of interesting. It's probably going to be kind of an ugly game. The Bears are also going to be without Rashawn Johnson again. They're going to be down to the Donta Foreman and like Darrington Evans running game. So that's the thing. You're bringing the kid in, not putting him in the best of situations, kind of with limited options. It's him and DJ Moore and maybe Cole Kmet if he can find Cole Kmet out there. But yeah, as you just nailed there, Trey, quarterback sucks this week. It is a limited slate across the board this week, which I think is going to be kind of a theme for everybody this week. There's a lot of really low totals, number of totals below 40, only one really super premium game. Obviously, that KC Chargers game. I think everybody in the universe is going to be expecting that one to go off, though. I think we can securely say that one has all the makings of a game that'll turn into a shootout and should go off. It's not one where we're trying to believe Vegas and selling us a narrative of some kind. which, by the way, they missed again last night. That game got into the 50s, naturally, after I ended the show by like equivocating back and forth about whether or not I thought Vegas would be right about that one. Don't think it goes over. Maybe not goes over, but I think the 48 total is at least, I mean, it's the highest one we've got to work with. Let's put it that way. I do think it's got a potential to reach around that number, maybe get slightly over, maybe slightly under. But I think that's definitely going to be our best spot for fantasy output this week. Or not definitely best, definitely most likely, right? Which comes through in projections. Thought that Dallas game would and didn't. Yeah, and there is, the Chiefs have a decent defense, but we'll get into it. Chiefs are 4th against the pass, 5.3 yards per pass attempt. But I fully expect, out of everybody, Justin Herbert, with the weapons he's got to work with, I think there's some potential there. Eckler back for another week, presumably full health. Keenan Allen, lot to work with there. One of these days, Quentin Johnston's going to have that step forward game, and we're going to nail it. It hasn't come yet. We keep rolling those dice. One of these days, it's going to be there. Yeah, I agree, Trey. I think that KCD is not bad at all. But I do think that is our overall most secure spot. We're talking about a week with multiple games in the 30s, 37.5. What do we have? 37.5, 38, 40, 40.5, 43. So we're either below 40 or there's a little bit range of 43 to 45.5, and then that one spikes 3 points higher than the others. Jake's here. What's up, Jake? Handful of folks hanging out. Let me pivot the view here. So let's get into it. I mean, it is going to be the story of where do you go for quarterback, and the quarterback typically drives the stack, as we've talked about. So we know that we can pick up the value ratings. We can find the good situations for some passing. Starting off the top, as usual, these are sorted by FanDuel projections, but then resorted by team alphabetically, not by matchup for this one. This is just straight by team, since we're talking team by team rather than game by game. So if you're wondering why these are in a specific order, it's all driven by that, and we're typically just talking about the quarterbacks on this show. Tomorrow will be the full deep dive, game by game, position by position, player by player, talking about guys who won't even see the field, marathon type of a show. Love talking about guys who've seen 4 targets all season. But on this show, we're here to talk about some of the quarterbacks. Off the top of the board here, this is another interesting one. Right back to kind of the situation he was in the last time we saw him, Josh Dobbs. Number 1 by point per dollar value on the DK slate concerns me in that stack. They're all very cheap on that team. You get Dobbs for 53. You get him at the same price as his wide receiver 1. Hollywood's also 53. You get Rondale for 35. Zach Ertz for 32. Michael Wilson, if they decide to throw him the wall, 38. They're dealing with Keontae Ingram at the running back. No James Conner. But, I mean, that is some talent, and it's some players who have gotten there already for us this year. Dobbs has not been good the last couple of times out. And it's been with kind of the weight of fantasy expectations on him after a pretty good start to the season. But in the matchup against Seattle, I've got Seattle going off. We're well ahead on Geno. Geno's going to be in the above column. I'm telling you that right now. Dobbs is more realistically projected, more right around the industry average on across sites. We might be a little bit ahead on Dobbs, but where he really gains ground is in that DK point per dollar for the stack. They're going up against a first-ranked 3.2 yards per rush attempt defense for Seattle, but 17th ranked 6.4 yards per pass attempt. I think it's a reasonable option for value. Jake says, I think Tua lights the Eagles up on Sunday. Love Tua. Trey says he wishes that game was on the main slate. As do I. That one's carrying a, 51-point total, I think? Lot of offense there. Should be fun for a showdown slate, though. Like, out of all the games we've had in primetime this year, that's one of the better just pure NFL games. And then it's going to be a great source for showdown scoring. Brutal showdown slate for me last night. Whoa, don't even want to talk about it. Not good. Hopefully somebody out there did better than I did. But, yeah, I had a rough one. Too much Calvin, too much whatever else didn't go off. Not enough ATN in the MVP spot. Probably too much Lawrence, too much Carr. Not a good one. Not one of my better slates, but we move on. So do you think, dealing with Dobbs on DK is going to be interesting given where this stack price is out? FanDuel, you get him 13th by point per dollar, 17th overall on both sites by pure just raw fantasy points. It's not like he's breaking the meter by fantasy points or anything. It's just how this stack comes together for price. Going down the board on the Atlanta side, Des Ridder played a little bit better last couple times out, but still not a quarterback I really have much faith in. 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions last time out. Threw the ball 47 times. The volume is nice to see. 28 completions, 47 attempts. Game before that, he was 28 of 37. He was also 300 yards plus in that game. 329, threw a touchdown, didn't throw an interception, and also added a rush touchdown. So those were 2 decent fantasy games, but overall his play hasn't really been great. The throws haven't really been great. I just love the weapons that he's got to work with. We've talked about this before. Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and then Algiers getting his touches too. So it's more to me still, rather than stacking this team that much, it's more of a spot where I get to them as taking some of the skill players. But I do think the Ridder stack is in play. 5,200 on DK, 69 on the FanDuel slate. Ranks 9th by point per dollar on DK, 17th by point per dollar on FanDuel, despite being the 13th ranked overall points stack. So it's definitely a better option on DK again. And that's partly because Drake and Ridder are both 6,900. Pitt's 56 versus the 4,000 he costs in the relative scale on DK. A little bit with Algier if you're putting him into that stack. And then Bijan at the top. So it's a pricey stack on the FanDuel slate. I prefer probably, if you're playing FanDuel, I think this is more, you start sourcing some one-offs of skill players from this side of this game, the Atlanta side. And they're going up against the Tampa D that's not been terrible. They're pretty effective against the pass, 6.4 yards per pass attempt. But if we jump over to this board, they've only allowed 6 touchdowns through the air so far this year, despite giving up some yardage. Blitzing 40% of the time, getting pressure 20% of the time. Not the greatest pass rush by any means. He should have some time to throw the ball. But they've been limiting touchdowns through the air while giving up some yardage. So I think there's an opportunity for them to have an impact here on Desmond Ridder. And then they've been pretty good bottling up the run. 10th ranked against the run, 3.7 yards per rush attempt. So I don't know how much I get invested in the Falcons. I'll have some drips and drabs of Bijan, some Drake London. Kyle Pitts at the tight end. He's fairly cheap. But yeah, the Ridder stack, not my favorite here. Poe DJ's watching for hockey. 18 minutes till a lock for hockey. Rangers play tonight? No, they lost last night. They probably don't play tonight. I haven't looked at the schedule. Lattimore lockdown. 2-1 Astros. Seager booted a double play ball. Oof. What's up, Jeremy? Jeremy Savage is here. What's up? Who we liking? I tell you, I'm really liking the looks of Geno. Geno's popping this week in my model. We'll get there. Jordan Love's popping a little bit, which I really don't like. Geno hasn't played great this year, but he's been better than it seems like. Multiple 300-yard games. Jordan Love threw those 3 touchdown passes each of weeks 1 and 2, and I'm spoiling with something we're about to talk about in a minute. But I really don't trust Jordan Love. But that said, he's got a really good opportunity against that Denver defense to have like a week 1, week 2 type performance. And he's got some decent weapons to work with. So those are 2 quarterbacks that I like a little bit better than I think the industry average. They're probably both going to make it into the above column, the above section of the above below column. By the way, everything up on the site. Projections are up, totally free for week 7. All the rankings are up. I updated the running back and the tight end rankings just before the show because during the afternoon I took out Rashawn Johnson, who I had in, and I took out Pat Freiermuth, who it now seems like is not going to play. Everybody else that was questionable is still pretty much questionable, except for Hoyer is going to be starting if you guys didn't catch that for the Raiders. We'll get to that one in a minute as well. Some people overnight were going back and forth, Aiden O'Connell, so on and so forth. But per The Athletic, it's going to be Hoyer. Per The Athletic, per the Raiders. So we've got him in there. But he was in my projections originally. So it's really just the only things that needed updating were the running back and the tight end rankings. But I ran an update for projections before the show, updated those two rankings tables. I'll have the stack rankings published in the shell for the groups article as usual. So you'll have the stack rankings handy, and then I'll fill in the groups and the stacks overnight. So you have those for tomorrow morning. We'll get them updated for Sunday morning. We'll get the above-below column written for Sunday. What else? We're around in Discord. Make sure you're in the Discord. Let's get that thing going. It's been a quiet couple of days. I was busy this week. Went to a couple things on Tuesday and Wednesday, so not a ton of chatter, and also not a lot of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday activity. With baseball being limited, basketball about to get started, so hopefully it'll pop up a little bit next week. We've got the basketball channel going. But yeah, make sure you're in the Discord. Follow the @RotoScouts Twitter handle. Retweet, like, so on and so forth. Let's keep on rolling through this thing. That's enough promoing. Jeez. But yeah, wanted to mention all the stuff that you can get on the site and what the schedule is going to look like. We'll also be back, like I said, tomorrow. Figure between the 5 and 6:30 hour start time, depending on when I got my act together. I'll get it posted early enough in the day that you can make plans. But we'll do the typical couple hours marathon game by game, like I said, somewhere in the early evening, late afternoon, however you want to look at that. So that was Des Ridder. Lamar, this is a premium option. Detroit's got a really good defense. That's my one thing. I don't love picking on Detroit's D. Lamar hasn't thrown enough touchdown passes. Overall, he's been really good, though. A lot of his passing metrics are good. He's second overall in quarterback carries and quarterback red zone carries. He's a dominant rusher with the ability to punch the ball into the end zone, and he's throwing the ball fairly well. Last time out, 21 of 30, 223 yards, a touchdown and a pick, 13 carries for 62 yards. He had two rushing touchdowns in each of weeks 3 and 4. Was that each? Hang on. Did I get that note right? Was it 2 in each, or was it 2 total? Yeah, it was 2 in each. Week 3 was 14 carries for 101 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 4, 9 carries, 27 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those are his only 2 weeks where he's had. I wrote myself a confusing note. Those are the only 2 weeks in which he's had rushing touchdowns. So he's got 4 rush touchdowns on the season. They came in just those 2 weeks. Overall, just 5 touchdown passes on the season. He's had 3 weeks with 0 touchdown passes. Only one of those 3 weeks where he had 0 touchdown passes was a week where he ran in 2 touchdowns. So in 2 of the weeks in which he threw no touchdowns, he also rushed for no touchdowns. That's a little bit concerning. But he's got decent weapons in Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews. The rushing game, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, I think could be a little bit better. The downstream receivers could certainly be better. It doesn't seem like Odell's got a ton left in the tank. Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar. I don't love those options. I like Bateman a heck of a lot better than Aguilar. That's how it's projected here. But I think at least with his 2 primaries, Lamar's certainly got enough weapons. And then he himself is enough of a weapon. He projects out great. That stack ranks 11th and 13th on DK. 10th and 8th points value on FanDuel. A little bit better as a value stack on FanDuel. Lamar himself is relatively cheap to the cap on FanDuel. Andrews and Flowers are priced basically appropriately. And then the downstream guys are affordable. But it's really about Lamar's price here, I think. If we look at just the pure quarterback numbers, Lamar QB 5 by points on DK, 5 on FanDuel as well. 17th by point per dollar on DK, though, because he costs $7,600. On FanDuel at that price, 6th by point per dollar. Going up against the defense, allowing 5.7 yards per pass attempt. 8 touchdowns on the season, only 221 yards a game. They're gaining pressure 26% of the time, which is certainly relevant, and only on a 20% blitz rate. They give up a lot of deep opportunities. 8.8 yard defensive ADOT is one of the higher, third highest? Or tied for third highest. So they're allowing some downfield opportunities, but they're getting to the quarterback. They've got at least an interception a game so far. It's a pretty decent defense. I'll have some Lamar, but I don't think I go crazy with him. I do like what he's priced at on FanDuel. I think he's a more limiting option on the DK slate, given the point per dollar rank there. That's not terrific. Part of that is impacted, obviously, by the projections we're getting on Jordan Love, on Geno Smith. To a lesser extent, like Sam Howell, for as cheap as he is, has an okay projection and a great opportunity going up against the Giants, so he's pulling a great point per dollar number. Danny Dimes, oh God, he only costs 56. He's pulling an okay projection, so he ranks out okay point per dollar. This is the kind of slate we're dealing with. I mean, here's a lot of good point per dollar guys. Dobbs I actually like. I think that's a decent opportunity. Russ, I think, is proven enough, even though he's really not Russ anymore. Outside of what he showed a little bit in flashes the first couple of weeks. Hasn't really been good the last couple times out, but ranks out okay at only 5,400. So there's a lot of just cheap kind of meh, but I do think you can spread options at least through like these guys. Maybe you don't go too much into the Pickett's, the Minshews, the Ritters, and so on and so forth of the world, and you just load up on a nice little spread for value across these guys that are a little bit more realistic. And then you've got your more likely guys that are all taking up the top 10 by actual fantasy points. And at that point, we don't really care what their point per dollar numbers look like, outside of course, these guys who are both value priced and projected well. So it's a really interesting board the way it comes together. And I do think it's kind of stark with a cut like right below Baker here. If I came up empty on shares of any of these guys that are highlighted, I wouldn't be that upset. I would want some of their skill players, particularly like Ritter. I would certainly want some of the Colts skill players, maybe even some like Deontay Johnson coming back for the I almost called them the Pirates, for the Steelers. I don't know how much of the Chicago skill players I really want. Cleveland, I don't really care if I miss out on skill players. New England certainly don't care. Vegas, I can definitely grab a few shares of some skill players, maybe even some Brian Hoyer. Out of everybody down there, 49, 63, 63 on FanDuel is not great. But he ranks 10th point per dollar. And he's got at least two incredible weapons and a really good wide receiver too. So I think Hoyer's maybe kind of sneaky interesting. Out of everybody below the Mayfield line here, I think Hoyer's the most interesting. A little weird flash sideways there. Keeping going with the team-based look here. Josh Allen. Somebody mentioned Allen before. Ooh, Jake Swales looking to win the millie with Baker Mayfield. I'm glad I made the line below Mayfield, not above Mayfield. That would have been disappointing. Same page, Jake. I think Mayfield's kind of interesting. Definitely not my favorite. Definitely doesn't project great. But I do like that offense. I do like the receivers that he's got to work with. Falcons giving up touchdowns through the air, but not giving up a ton of yards per pass attempt or quarterback fantasy scoring. Baker had 3 touchdown passes in week 4, 246 yards, 25 of 32. Last time out, 19 of 37 for 206. No touchdowns, 1 interception. Jeremy Savage says, why you like Mayfield? That game feels disgusting. I'll tell you what, we'll skip ahead. We bounce around on this show. This one's the casual, little informal one. So we get him 16th and 14th point per dollar, 12th overall by raw fantasy points on both sites. Like I said, the Falcons do bottle up the pass a little bit. They're limiting scoring to the quarterback position for fantasy. They're only allowing 5.8 yards per pass attempt, 7th overall. But in touchdowns, they've given up 10 through the air. Only 179 yards a game. You can see the yardage that they're giving up is pretty good. But 10 touchdowns through the air shouldn't be completely discounted. Out of these teams, that's 4th worst. 8.1 yard defensive ADOT. They're gaining pressure 30% of the time, which could be problematic. Is that the highest pressure rate on this slate? 2nd highest. Somehow with that pressure rate, they've only managed 10 sacks, though. Only 3 interceptions. So it's more of a bend, don't break type defense, I think. And with the premium receivers that he's got to work with, I just love Evans and Godwin here. I really like getting to them when they're not crazy expensive for what I think their talent levels are. And he's been effectively delivering them the ball, at least in spots. Not a ton of other places to go in that offense. So I think we're just kind of hyper concentrated around these three guys, which is both good and bad in a stack. You're also talking about a game with a 37.5 point total. And again, two decent defenses. But yeah, for dart throw, super large field contest, millie maker type situations, that's an embraceable spot. Anytime you can get an okay quarterback at obviously has to be at a, somewhat effective price. It's not a great value price. What did he rank out over here? Here you go. You pick up a little ground here. QB 9 by DK value. QB 10 by FanDuel point per dollar. 13 on both sites. So again, it's a matter of jumping back and forth between those rankings for the quarterback and the stacks. But I do think, as I was saying, anytime you can get mid quarterback, a guy who can have a good game, a guy who can throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that's really all Baker needs to do here. And then he's got 2 premium receivers to work with, I can include that stack in my pool. And for a millie maker type tournament, that can absolutely be a winner. Jake says it's a game for sole possession of first place. I didn't realize that. That's interesting. A little early for standings looks, obviously, but early gets late awful fast in football too. So that's interesting. I hadn't realized that. Makes it maybe also does feed the idea though that they're just going to be bashing their heads together with a couple good defenses there, and a couple okay limited-ish kind of quarterbacks who just happen to have good weapons to work with. I like the weapons better than the quarterbacks on both sides. Here's a quarterback I like a lot. So does everybody else. I believe he's number 2 overall on the slate. Josh Allen. Number 2 by points on both sites. Number 18 by point per dollar, but at this level we just don't care. Costs $8,200 on the DK slate. Number 9 by point per dollar on the FanDuel slate. Again, we just don't care. He's been terrific. Or mostly terrific anyway. He's thrown some interceptions. He's got an injured shoulder. Says he's good to go. Says it's not going to be anything that's going to hamper him. New England ranks basically in the middle across the board for passing stats. Whoops. 3rd against the run, 3.4 yards per rush attempt so far. 15th against the pass. Like I said, right about the middle. 6.3 yards per pass attempt. 200 yards a game, 6.3 yards per pass attempt. Six touchdowns on the season. So they haven't given up a ton of touchdowns through the air. They're okay pass defense. But it's Josh Allen. He can do a little bit of everything. 19 of 30 the last time out, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Not the best game in the world for him. Ran 2 times for 11 yards. He hasn't had a game over 50 rushing yards this season. Only like 3 to 4 carries a game, but he does have 3 rushing touchdowns. They came in 3 of the last 4 weeks. He didn't get one last time out, but 3 games in a row before that he had a rushing touchdown. He's got a touchdown pass in every game this year. Only 2 games with just 1 touchdown. So multiple touchdown passes in 4 of 6 games. His peak so far was in week 4 against Miami. 320 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 21 of 25 passing. Definitely the upside for that type of a game, even against New England's defense. Saw some weird stat going around, and I didn't fully absorb it, so forgive me. It was on somebody's tweet, but somebody reliable, I forget who. Kudos to whoever sent this tweet if you're out there. But it was something about the Patriots are, I think it was like number 1, call it top 5, just to put a little padding on it, against wide receiver 1, and then like 32nd against wide receivers 2 and 3. So something to keep in mind maybe with the ancillary receiving options if you're going to Buffalo stacks. I do think it could be a day. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, you're going to have tons of Stephon Diggs in your Buffalo stacks anyway, right? We're not going away from Stephon Diggs, but it could lead to a little bit of Gabe Davis day. Maybe even the Hardys of the world get involved a little bit, the downstream guys. They've got 3 kind of mixed bag downstream guys. I haven't pulled together the targets and all of that. We'll have that for tomorrow. But there's options here. There's cheap options. There's ways to get low owned and cheap in your Buffalo stacks. They work out fairly well. Highly ranked on both sites. We talked about Tyson, apparently the son of an arm wrestler. I guess that's obviously, good for the idea that maybe he's got a really strong arm and he can throw the ball. Where'd he go to school? I didn't look him up. I know he was undrafted. Forgot I'm not supposed to open a new tab. Where did Tyson Bagent play football? That was the NCAA's all-time leader in touchdown passes with 159, an NCAA record for all divisions. I didn't know that. Where the hell did he go to school? The Shepherd Rams? Shepherd Rams in Shepherd, Wisconsin? What? Wait a minute. Shepherd University? I've literally never heard of this school. Is this one of those like made up colleges like Correspondence School or like Trump University or... Oh shit, I shouldn't have said that. I think we all know that, right? Regardless of what you might think of them, like that was not a real university. I actually used to try and sell to them when I was working in IT in New York City, and before that I knew that it didn't actually exist and they didn't have facilities. I would call them. I'd be like, "Can I speak to your IT manager?" And they'd be like, "Who? Are you looking to enroll in one of our courses?" All right, so this kid went to, Shepherd Rams College, Shepherd College in West Virginia. No, he grew up in West Virginia. Shepherd University is also in West Virginia. Shepherdstown, West Virginia. The university enrolled 3,100 students in 2020. So it's a D2 school. All right, but he is apparently the all-time leader for touchdown passes in the NCAA across all divisions, with 159 career touchdown passes. So he's got that going for him, and apparently his dad was an arm wrestler. He's very cheap, $4,900 on DK, $6,300 on FanDuel. I mean, he's the same price as his running back, as Donta Foreman. Doesn't make him the most appealing option. I don't love this spot. Oops. Obviously, we're talking about a guy who's projecting out down here. 18th by fantasy points, 12th by DK point per dollar. Does give him a little something to cling to. 17th by FanDuel point per dollar, fortunately, so I don't have to mess with him too much. Probably not going to... He'll be in the pool. I'll let him build lineups, but he's probably not going to sort into or sim into too many roster spots. Last week, he came in, like I said, 10 of 14 for 83 yards after Fields got hurt. No touchdown, 1 interception. Undrafted quarterback. Going to be throwing the ball to one very good receiver in DJ, a pretty good tight end, and then Mooney, Scott. I don't really love his downboard options here, his down the depth chart options. I don't really love that they're limited in the rush game again to Donta Foreman and Darrington Evans going up against the defense that's allowing plenty. 6.2 yards per pass attempt, ranks 14th, 4.3 yards per rush attempt, ranks 21st. A backup quarterback on the other side. The better skill players are on the other side of this one. Right? Just the idea that he's got Jacobs and Devontae Adams on the other side. Even if Brian Hoyer goes out and has just a mediocre game, Vegas could still put up some points. And Jacoby Myers on it. Like Jacoby and DJ Moore are probably roughly comparable. So their third skill player is probably roughly comparable to the second skill player. It's probably being a little bit unfair to DJ, but not completely. So given where it ranks, you take it for what it is. It's cheap. I don't know how much I get to DJ Moore on his own type situations. He'll certainly be in the pool. He'll probably come up a little bit more on the DK slate. Where he's, where's he rank? I didn't put in any of the receivers, but now I kind of want to know. On DK, he ranks as wide receiver 19, 38th by point per dollar, 19 and 29th point per dollar on FanDuel. So not as good as I was thinking when I saw his cheaper DK price. Yeah, I don't love the spot for Chicago here. And it's another game, 37.5 point total. They expect it to be close. I could see Vegas kind of getting up and ahead though if Jacobs comes out, breaks off a couple decent runs, gets him down in the red zone early, and they put the ball in the end zone. Could be an ugly day for Chicago. Cleveland, we've got PJ Walker in. Deshaun Watson did practice the last 2 days. No announcement yet. I'll probably end up pivoting that out tonight. It'll probably be Deshaun when you guys wake up and look at this in the morning. First thing, I know everybody like Christmas morning rushes to the computer to see what the changes have been on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Yeah, probably it does seem like Deshaun's got a little bit of momentum to play. Right now, PJ, last time out, 18 of 34, 192 yards, no touchdown, 2 interceptions. That was against San Francisco. You forgive a little bit of it. Cleveland had a great game that day, but he was not all that great. Deshaun becomes somewhat more usable. He's been better as the season's gone. He got better. What did we see him last in week 3? So he seemed like he was getting progressively a little bit better, running the ball a little bit effectively. But overall, especially with more missed time now, what are we really buying if Deshaun plays? So I don't love that spot, and I especially don't like it that much because I do like Amari Cooper, but I think the running back situation here is kind of split, kind of unclear between Ford and Kareem Hunt. You've got Elijah Moore, who is so hit and miss. A decent tournament option, but not one of my favorites, and very, very limited. So it's just an offense I don't really like to go to. I do like their defense. 3.7 yards per rush attempt, 11th in the league. 6.8 yards per pass attempt, 22nd overall. That's Indy's defense. What am I talking about? Cleveland's defense is 4th and 2nd. Yeah. 3.5 yards per rush attempt, 4.6 yards per pass attempt. So out of everything in that game, on the Cleveland side, it's kind of the defense that I'm leaning into a little bit. But maybe you could go like some if you have a preference between the two running backs, maybe you go a little bit of Jerome Ford in the defense. I don't really love going wide receiver in the defense, but I think you can maybe get to some shares of Amari Cooper. He projects out fairly well. He's not going to be all that highly ranked for points or value or anything either, though. 13, 20, 13, 12. That's not that terrible, actually. 13, 12. So probably a usable skill player, more so than a stack spot. Usable skill player, some defense. The Indy side of that one, I think they just kind of get bottled up by the Cleveland D. Indy is a bit of a pass funnel defense. They're not that great against the run, but they're definitely worse against the pass. So that does feed the upside. It probably is more realistic for Deshaun, though, than for PJ Walker. So if you get Deshaun in there, maybe you see a little bit of an uptick for the ranking for the Cleveland stack as it adjusts. And then on this side of this one, Gardner Minshew going up against a good defense. It's his job the rest of the way. He threw the ball 55 times last time out. The volume, you got to love that volume. But he threw a ton of bad passes. If you're into the bad throw rankings and the risk of turnover rankings and stuff like that, they were all just awful. Threw for 329 yards, had a touchdown pass, but 3 interceptions, and had a few more that should have been picked. So just not great, but the sheer volume helps. The price isn't terrible. Has him sitting 16th and 17th for stacks, 16th and 16th for on FanDuel. He himself, 15th and 13th on DK, 15th across the board on FanDuel. Just not that appealing. I know there's Gardner Minshew supporters out there, but I'm not really the biggest Gardner Minshew guy in the world. So I think going up against a good D, I just favor the Cleveland defense. And then on the Indy side, you can take some shots with Michael Pittman. Some Jonathan Taylor probably gets a little bit more involved this week. Even some Josh Downs as like a value wide receiver. I think you can get there. But again, another game, 40.5 point total. Close spread is good, but going up against the defense that's been good on both sides. I don't really love going to the Colts for that many skill player purchases. Trey says, with how this week is, could we see more of an uncorrelated approach winning? I do think that's an interesting point, Trey, especially with like Lamar lurking out there. You could certainly get him just going off like crazy without necessarily involving his receivers to the point where they're mandatory. So if he breaks that, then everything else falls into place for an uncorrelated type of a lineup to win. Outside of him, you could say maybe Mahomes, but it's probably Mahomes, Kelsey. Herbert probably needs his skill players. Stafford certainly does. Geno certainly does. I don't expect Danny Dimes to do anything. Howell potentially is a value option. I'm just trying to think of guys who might be able to bend it a little bit without their receivers. It's kind of limited in that, but I get what you're after. It might be more of a slate where we're talking about skinny stack, quarterback +1 and no bring back. I think it was Larry was asking in the Discord about that. Would you force a bring back this week? And we haven't really been doing that outside of the first week. I think I had more mandatory bringbacks in the groups column, and then Dennis pointed out to me that I was probably leaning on that a little bit too much. So I actually took that away, and I've got it so that it allows the bring back rather than forcing it for most of them. Outside of like the KC Chargers game for this one, as I do builds, I'll probably toggle that on and off. This set of 300 lineups, force a bring back from that game. This set, don't. And maybe like the Arizona-Seattle game I might do that with. But yeah, for this one, I definitely think you can get away with skinny stacks. Don't necessarily have to have a bring back play. And if you get that Lamar type game or one of these other quarterbacks just gets it a little bit bent where their score is competitive with one of these guys that's stacked up, especially if the quarterback, like let's say Dobbs throws one and somehow runs 2 in and rushes for like 50 plus yards, has a decent day here for a very, very cheap price, but it doesn't necessarily have to involve one of these receivers. This isn't actually a great example because I was going to say it was had to be a quarterback. Oh yeah. So he's doing that at a cheap price. And then the other competitive quarterback score, maybe even he surpasses him. But let's say it's like Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. If Dobbs is close to Allen for the price difference, and then whoever else is in there other than Stephon Diggs, unless Diggs puts up the 200 plus yards, 3 touchdown, absolute monster must have for the price difference. If Dobbs slightly outpaces or slightly falls behind Josh Allen, but they're like 1-2, then it probably leans into those Dobbs value lineups. If you can, put together in the aggregate with all the savings across 7 positions, the equivalent score of like what Stephon Diggs did, which I think you would be able to do. So I think, yeah, things like that definitely lean us into a little bit of a potential for non-correlated lineups to win. That said, I still do greatly prefer at least one skill player with my quarterback outside of the guys who have all the skills of a running back at the quarterback position like Lamar, the guys who can just go out and win a slate by itself. I'll take Lamar naked stacks all day. But every other quarterback on this slate, I think for the most part, I want them with at least a skill player. What I will say is, as I was looking at the groups, as I was putting together the stack rankings, it was a week in which I included a lot more running backs in the stacks than usual, which I think is partly because of some of these weak quarterbacks, some of the teams where it's, there are just good running backs who you would want in there. But there's a lot of teams this week where it was just like, all right, I could go down to that shitty wide receiver, but like it's really unjustified. So I included a few more running backs in the stack rankings this week. So I do think it's a little bit more of a get a little loose with your constructions kind of week for sure. That's a great point, Trey. Good question, buddy. Beantown's here. Beantown says, wouldn't be surprised to see running back by committee with Foreman, Homer, and Evans. Is Homer active? I hadn't seen that. I don't think I have Homer in. Yeah, if Homer's active, he'll get involved in that committee as well. Travis Ho. Okay, full practice on Thursday. So yeah, Homer will be back. Let me. Damn it! I didn't mean to close that. I'll just do it in here. If you guys spot any of those others, or if there's any other breaking news or anything like that, let me know. I'll make sure I get them added, but helps me. I can add them and make notes for myself here. So Travis Homer will be in the next cut of projections. Keeping this thing rolling here. Said we go an hour. We're 45 minutes in and we're only on Denver. But we skipped around a little bit. We've talked about some of these others. Russ Wilson, kind of more on that list of questionable quarterbacks. Had a decent start to the year. Week 2, he was 308 yards, 3 touchdowns. Week 3, 306 yards, but just 1 touchdown. And then declining from there. Week 4, 21 of 28 for 223 yards. Did throw 3 touchdown passes in that game. Last time out, just 13 of 22 for 95 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. That's pretty ugly. Week before that, 20 of 31 for 196 and 2. Green Bay's pretty good at limiting quarterback scoring. Top 10 defense against quarterbacks for fantasy scoring so far this year. I like Jerry Jeudy, but he hasn't really broken through this year. Cortland Sutton is okay. They're both fairly cheap. I do have to give them that. If Russ has a decent day, or maybe they have to have a decent day to help Russ out, whichever way that equation works, 45.5 point total with ideas that I want to get to some Jordan Love on the other side and that side shining through. I do want to have some Denver on the other side of that one. They're going to need to do what they can to support this game going off and fully delivering that kind of a score. But throwing a struggling Russ against a team that's allowing 6 yards per pass attempt, 9th ranked overall, less than 200 yards a game, only 5 touchdowns on the season, only a 6-yard defensive ADOT, gaining pressure 25.7% of the time, 15 sacks on the year. It's a decent pass defense there. I think there's a great opportunity for Green Bay to gouge them on the other side with how bad Denver's been. So with the idea that Green Bay gets up and out and Denver's got to keep pace, maybe we see a little bit of uptick in volume for Russ. And he's just got that limited game. The last time he only threw the ball 22 times. Week before, 31 times. That's mediocre. 28 times. He really hasn't thrown the ball a ton this year. So if we get the game where Russ is flinging the ball a little bit more, there's believability with a couple of decent receivers there that he could pick things up. They've got the weapon in Marvin Mims that they just refuse to give additional snaps and let him cook. But any given slate, I do think that's a weapon for them. Maybe this is the Marvin week. On the Green Bay side, Aaron Jones expected to play. Been banged up in and out of practices. But I like Love's options in Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed even, to a degree. I think is a reasonable receiver. The tight end is okay. The running backs, when we're not splitting it as much between Jones and Dillon, or when it's not A.J. Dillon on his own, I don't mind this running back situation. Aaron Jones, talented guy, a lot of involvement in the passing game. Jordan Love overall, I am above on him. I don't really know how comfy I feel about that. As I mentioned, he was boosted in the early goings. He threw 3 touchdown passes in each of the first 2 weeks and 0 interceptions. That was at Chicago and at Atlanta. Atlanta, decent pass defense, but maybe they didn't know it yet that week. But since then, last time out, 16 of 30, 182 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 2 carries for 37 yards and an ugly one at Las Vegas. That was week 5. They had a bye in week 6. Week 4, 23 of 36, 246 yards, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. 22 of 44 for 259, 1-on-1 in week 3. Hasn't been great since those first 2 weeks. But does have good weapons, projects out well, and Denver has been just god-awful on defense. 32nd ranked against the run out of 32 teams. 32nd ranked against the pass out of 32 teams. 5.6 yards per rush attempt, 8.2 yards per pass attempt. Not used to Jordan Love being all the way up here. 268 yards a game, 14 passing touchdowns on the season. Some of it obviously a little bit padded still by that disaster against Miami in their defensive numbers, but they only press the quarterback 16.7% of the time, 25.7% blitz rate. So they're throwing a decent amount of blitzes and not really getting to the quarterback all that often. 14 total sacks, 4 interceptions. I am really not worried about the Denver defense. The average nature of the quarterback, the average nature of the output so far in most of those games, I'm a little concerned, but he's shown the upside. He's shown us that he can have the big game. So I'm going to have probably way too much Jordan Love this week. QB4 by points on DK, second by point per dollar, fourth and third on FanDuel. Geno slightly above him, third and first on both sites. That one I'm a little bit more comfy with. Just have a little bit more of trust with Geno, even though he hasn't really put up the big game yet this year. Keeping it going here. This is what I like. Not a great opportunity in terms of the pass defense that they're facing, but I just like the skill. Jared Goff, underrated guy, good quarterback overall. Amon-Ra St. Brown, very high-end receiver. Sam Laporta, the second, I believe, overall tight end on this slate. Josh Reynolds, a good third banana as a wide receiver. Jameson Williams, kind of a sleeper. 3,800 on the DK slate, 5,600 on the FanDuel slate. Projects out fairly well. Tons and tons of talent. Whoops. Come on, Jameson. Show all the good people where you rank. Where do you rank? 41st and 35th, 40th and 40th. I thought it'd be a little bit better given that 3,800 price on the DK slate. 35th, not bad. I mean, it's considering he's the third wide receiver on that team right now. But there's more talent than that ranking reveals, I think. So pretty decent tournament play there. Even going up against a first-ranked 4.5 yards per pass attempt defense. I just think there's enough talent here. Goff ranks right here in the middle of the board. 8th on DK by points, 11th by points per dollar. 8th on FanDuel, 12th by points per dollar. They're only allowing 163 yards through the air. They've only allowed 4 touchdown passes. 19.3% pressure rate with a 28.3% blitz rate. They should probably be getting to the quarterback a little bit more, but they do have 24 sacks. So they're getting to the quarterback despite not the highest press rate, I guess. So a lot of successful pressures, if you want to look at it that way. 5 picks on the season. It's a good defense. I mean, there's no bones about it. Detroit's got a good defense of their own on that side. 43-point total. Close spread in Vegas. 3-point game. It's essentially the home field advantage. As much as I'm going to go to Baltimore on the one side, I think I'm going to come back and go to Detroit on the other side. These guys are effective bring back plays against Lamar if you wanted to do it. I think you could even go Lamar naked with an Amon-Ra coming back the other way. Is an interesting way to put that together for a little bit of correlated scoring. That isn't directly tied, but the idea of a game that inflates. And just a more unique way to put that lineup together rather than forcing like a Lamar plus Zay or something like that. Not that Lamar plus Zay is bad. But I like Goff here. And I like some of his weapons. On the ground, they're getting Jahmyr Gibbs back. So that should be helpful. Also, I think Craig Reynolds, in the absence of David Montgomery, is certainly viable. Montgomery not going again this week. Love we just talked about. Minshew we talked about earlier. Don't really like the spot, just to reiterate. Don't like the quarterback all that much. I like Pittman a lot. I don't love the split backfield situation, even though both of these guys are talented. Both of them have, obviously, some ability. I think Downs and Pierce are okay down depth chart receivers, but I just don't want to tangle with this Cleveland D. We got away from San Francisco a little bit last week going up against the Cleveland defense. We're certainly not going to not get away from Indy shares against Cleveland defense. A little bit of respect for that Browns defense. Big boy here going up against the Chargers. 31st ranked, 7.7 yards per pass attempt so far this season against the Chargers D. Going up against Patrick Mahomes. As discussed, highest game total on the board at 48 points. Tons and tons of upside here. There's going to be a lot of popularity here, though. That's the thing. Mahomes Kelsey is going to be super popular, even with the pricing, 8,000. They rank second by fantasy points on DK, even at their aggressively high pricing, still 5th by point per dollar, first across the board on FanDuel. And that's with these two guys at 92 and 85. Rashee Rice helps lower that stack price immediately. And it's both the advantage and the disadvantage with this Chiefs receiving game. None of these guys are great. They're all fairly affordable outside, obviously, after Kelsey. But the wide receivers, Rashee Rice is the guy who seems to be developing some chemistry, seems to be the guy getting more and more looks as the season goes on. He's cheap. Kadarius Toney drops like half the passes that are thrown to him. Not really statistically, but got to exaggerate these things. But he's very cheap. He's got some upside. If he gets in the end zone like he did the last time out, there's potential there. Sky Moore, very cheap. Middling output, middling projections. And it declines through here. They also picked Mecole Hardman back up. Don't know if he's going to be active for them. So I think the approach for Kansas City is probably, I don't want to say forego that combination, obviously. You want to have a decent amount of it. Maybe you do more of Mahomes, Kelsey plus another and go for I want my Kelsey in the super stacks, or I want my Kelsey standing alone, and then just have some of Mahomes and Kelsey as your skinny stack with the Chiefs. But I think getting to Mahomes, Rice, Mahomes, Toney, Mahomes to a lesser extent any of these guys probably has some differentiation value, certainly has some cost-saving value that's baked into these point per dollar rankings. Tons of upside going up against this past D, though. For what it's worth, Chargers allowing the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, the second most yards per pass attempt. That's actually tied for second, I believe, 7.7. Mahomes, 30-plus completions each of the last 2 weeks, 30 of 40 for 306, 1-1 the last time out, 31 of 41 for 281, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions the week before that. He didn't run it all in week 5, but usually 6 or 7 carries, 25-ish, 25 or above yards. No rushing touchdowns on the season yet, but he's got 3 games with 2 touchdown passes, 1 game with 3 touchdown passes, and at least 1 touchdown pass in every game. Him and Josh Allen both have touchdown passes in every game. If nothing else, there's some sheer just reliability and star power of just pay up and book some points. It's probably the safest quarterback floor on the board. It's probably the highest quarterback ceiling on the board. It's just who catches it. Outside of Kelsey, who catches it? Talk about a team that needs a receiver I don't know, Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about a team that could use a weapon at the wide receiver position. It's all they really need. As discussed, their defense has been pretty good against the pass, 4th ranked against the pass, 5.3 yards per pass attempt. That's what Justin Herbert and his offense are going to have to be facing. I like them just as much as the Chiefs, right there with the Chiefs. I think this game is a great source of potential fantasy scoring, likely fantasy scoring. First, by sheer points on DK, because they pick up a little bit of reception power, where the wide receivers from the Chiefs don't help in that regard. It's very, very close, though. There's not a lot of daylight between those two team projections. 10th by point per dollar, because they are a little bit more expensive because it's Eckler and Keenan both in there. So again, that's something to keep in mind. Where the Chiefs stack is Mahomes, Kelsey. I think I put Pacheco and then Rashee Rice. Pacheco significantly less expensive than Eckler. And then Josh Palmer and Rashee Rice, roughly equivalent pricing on DK. So they pick up, Los Angeles loses a little bit of point per dollar value there. But again, at this point with this type of a team, I don't really care that much about the point per dollar. 2nd and 7th on FanDuel, same effect overall, given who's in the stack. But again, very, very high end. And certainly 10th and 7th is not tragic on a 20-team slate. Herbert, for his value, 37 pass attempts last time out. Completed 22 of them, 227 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Week 5 bye. Week 4 kind of week, 167 yards, a touchdown, an interception, only completed 13 of 24. Had the monster 405 yards, 3 touchdowns on 40 of 47 pass attempts at Minnesota in week 3. That's what we're looking for. 9 touchdown passes on the season, just 2 interceptions. KC, 4th lowest yards per pass attempt. Top 10 fantasy points, top 10 in the top 10 best at limiting fantasy points. You know what I'm saying? Against the quarterback position. So definitely Herbert's got his work cut out for him. But if I'm betting on anybody, he's on the short list of quarterbacks that I want to be betting on getting to a pretty decent defense. Love Keenan Allen. Love Austin Eckler. Josh Palmer's been really effective. As I mentioned, my preference would be that they work Quentin Johnston into that spot. And I kind of thought they would. He's, I think, a 3rd round pick, if I'm not mistaken. A little bit of draft capital there for them. but just hasn't really gotten the targets, hasn't really gotten the looks. We'll talk about it again more on tomorrow's show when I've got all the targets and everything laid out. But just to, especially when Mike Williams went out, I thought, all right, this is going to be the time. Week 4, kid came out, ran 21 routes on 32 snaps, was targeted 3 times, caught one of them for 18 yards. Then they had the bye week. Then when they played Dallas, we were talking about it again on the show. All right, with the bye week, they got to have planned for this kid a little bit, got to be out there getting this kid involved a little bit. And then week 6 came, they played Dallas. He was out there for 29 snaps with the offense. He ran, the routes are incorrect, but he was targeted twice and did not catch either of them. It's limiting. It's limiting when you're not getting targets. It's limiting when you're not catching your targets. But I do think the Quentin Johnston game is coming one of these weeks. And in a game where I really do see some passing going on, I think there's some opportunity here. Jake, was he a first rounder? Did I have that wrong? Johnston was a first rounder? Even more to the point then. Why the hell are they not using the kid? Yep, first rounder. You're right. Yeah, 6'3", 208. If nothing else, just like a big target in the red zone. He's seen 2 red zone targets all season. I mean, granted, he's seen 5, 11, 13 targets total all season. But yeah, especially with it being a first-round pick, like, what the hell are you doing? Get the kid involved. Big body, if nothing else. But yeah, tons and tons of potential for this one to shoot out. Everybody's going to be on it. So just, keep in mind, individual ownership, individual player ownership, even 1-2 or 1-2 skinny stack ownership, doesn't matter. It really, truly doesn't matter. Just focus on, what does the rest of that lineup look like? What do my combinations look like? What am I doing in those other spots? Can I get to a little bit of differentiation somewhere? And we're not talking about, now I need a 0.1% owned $3,500 guy to cover that, who's projected for half a fantasy point. That is not what we're looking for. We're looking for guys with realistic projections. We're not really sweating the individual ownership that much. It is so, in full slate NFL, you really don't worry about the dupes. You obviously worry about leverage. We want to get our overall portfolio leveraged properly against the field. We want to be taking advantage of guys that the field is leaving on the table. Skill players, same thing. But we're really not, there's not a spot where I'm going to say, all right, this guy's popular. That combination of Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce is too popular. I don't want it. Like I said, I think my approach to it will probably be, I want it a little bit more in a Mahomes Kelce +1. Mahomes Kelce Rice, Mahomes Kelce Tony. Mahomes Kelce Pacheco is probably a little bit pricey. But like Mahomes Kelce and McKinnon even. Just differentiate. Get to realistic plays. McKinnon doesn't project out poorly. He's going to be very unpopular in that offense. They throw the ball to him. He gets looks in, I almost said he gets looks in the red zone. Let me verify that he's gotten any. I think he's gotten a couple. Again, we're cutting into tomorrow's show. He's gotten a carry in the red zone. And he's gotten 2 targets in the red zone. He's got no receiving touchdowns. No rushing touchdowns, but he's got 2 receiving touchdowns that he put up in the same game when they played Chicago in week 3. It's not your greatest, most productive, most likely option, but you're going to your greatest, most productive, most likely options with your first 2 spots from that Kansas City stack. He's your differentiator. He's what makes it more unique. He's what helps you win if he gets into the end zone. He's what puts that stack over the top. These 2 guys just got to do their job for the money. So I do think the Chiefs are interesting for that, and that's what I'm focused on when I build any of these stacks. So individual ownership, I just don't sweat. Don't go away from teams just because they're popular. It's a little bit flawed to think that way. Going down the list a little bit, a couple of these spots left. Fortunately, we won't really have to talk too much about this one. But this one definitely, I think we're involved a lot with. 43.5 point total. Rams favored by 3 going up against the Steelers. Almost called them Pirates again. 27th ranked against the rush, 4.8 yards per rush attempt. 21st ranked against the pass, 6.7 yards per pass attempt. Stafford with his two fantastic wide receiver weapons, +2 to Atwell, a decent tight end, and their premium running back going to be out for a while. Kyron Williams out. Zach Evans taking the ball most likely here. Probably see a little bit, I guess, of Royce Freeman, but it's primarily expected to be Zach Evans. He's definitely cheap. I'm sure when we look at the rankings for running backs, he'll be pretty well ranked. Come on. All right. It's not funny if they do it a third time. There we go. 20th by points, but second by points per dollar for Zach Evans on DK. 19th and second by points per dollar on the FanDuel slate. Very cheap running back. So I think he's involved. But I think really what I really like about this opportunity is, all right, we don't have to give it to our backup running back all that many times when we've got such a capable passing attack. Let's start throwing the ball. Let's have a little fun with this one. Could be a big day for Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and then Tutu Atwell comes in and steals 2 touchdowns from those two guys, kind of a day. But I definitely want to get to some stacks here. 4th ranked by points on DK, 11th ranked by point per dollar. Perfectly fine with that. 6th across the board on the FanDuel slate. One of the higher ranked, better looking stacks of the day. Stafford, QB 9 by points. 16th by point per dollar on DK isn't great. That's kind of surprising, actually. 6,500. Mid-board projection. On FanDuel, 9th and 5th. Only 6,700 on the FanDuel slate. Gained some significant value over there, obviously, point per dollar. But I like him on both sites. I like that stack on both sites. Definitely a good source also of just one-off shares of Cooper. I'll have one-offs of Tutu Atwell as well. Rams defense going up against the Chargers even. I think maybe you could throw a couple of shares at that. They're 22nd ranked against the run, but I'm not really totally afraid of the Jalen Warren and Najee Harris two-headed running back attack here. They're 11th against the pass, 6.1 yards per pass attempt. They're going to get up against a pretty mediocre Kenny Pickett. He's getting Deontay back this week, which is a big uptick for that passing attack. He's got George Pickens, who I think is a decent wide receiver as well. But no Freiermuth coming back, so they're dealing with probably Connor Hayward and Darnell Washington, I guess, at the tight end. Would not have been able to conjure those names. But kind of split, limited. Who knows? Very good receiver, but who knows? Like talented guy, but this guy throwing to him. I don't love this Pittsburgh stack. 18th by points, 14th by value, 19th and 20th on FanDuel. Rams defense is good enough here. Rams D is... I don't have any notes about it. Thought I had noted some things. We can jump over to this board then. Now this, allowing 289 yards. That's a lot of yards for only 6.1 yards per pass attempt. Only 8 touchdowns. 8.8 yard ADOT. So maybe more a little bend, don't break. Allow some yards, but not that many touchdowns. And again, going up against Kenny Pickett. Not going to really sweat it. 21 sacks on the year. 20.7% pressure. That's what, the third highest sack total? 2 at 24. Buffalo's D, 24 sacks, 8 picks, 31% pressure rate going up against Mac Jones. Defense. I think that'll be a pretty popular D. Seattle, we touched on briefly earlier. One of my favorite spots, 44-point total. They're favored by 8.5, which isn't great. Kenny Walker projects out for a great game, which isn't totally great for our upside for the entire stack scoring. What we really need is Arizona to come through, Josh Dobbs to come through and hang in there with Seattle and push this total up and maybe beat the spread there. But Geno projects out great. The stack looks good. 3rd overall on both sides by points. 4th on DK. 2nd on FanDuel by point per dollar. Geno 3rd ranked. 3rd and 1st on DK. 3rd and 1st on FanDuel. It's an aggressively high projection. A couple of points ahead of the industry average for sure. They're giving up 243 yards per game, 9 touchdowns on the season. They're only pressuring the quarterback 15.7% of the time. They do have 18 sacks, but only 4 picks. Plenty of opportunity for Geno to throw against this Arizona team. I think I covered the entire note because the entire note was Cards get no pressure, give up tons of yards and fantasy points to QBs. We're above on Geno. 27 of 41. Love the volume. 326 yards. No touchdowns. 2 interceptions in week 6. Week 5 bye. Limited in week 4. 13 of 20. 110 yards. A touchdown. That was the game against the Giants. He came out for a little bit that game after taking a shot. Had 3 strong yardage games in his 5 games on the season, though. They've already had their bye week. So 3 of his games, 328, 296, and 326 yards. So we're pressing 300 yards in basically half his starts. Just not throwing enough touchdowns. But it seems like a situation where they'll regress. He's got 2 very, very good wide receivers to work with. So I really like this situation. Geno +2 with those 2 guys. Geno +2 with these 2 or with these 2. Geno plus any one of those guys. Charbonnet, I forget whether the note that I saw right before the show was that he was questionable or whether he was out. But keep an eye on Charbonnet. We'll get it updated later in the day. Fant and Disley, somewhat effective tight end options. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba in that offense, unless something changed dramatically that I am not remembering off the top of my head, very limited in terms of the ADOT, in terms of where he operates around the field. Hasn't really put up a huge game at this point, but very cheap and a reasonably talented kid out there. Another highly picked, another first-round draft pick. So another kid that I expect will be involved, 3,900, 4,900. Where does he rank out? Probably not great because his projection isn't great. Yeah, 38th and 30th, 38th and 33rd. But you can see he picks up a little bit of value compared to his just raw fantasy points. But definitely going to have some of that Seattle passing attack. I know we bounced around a little bit. We're also at hour 11. That's okay. Nowhere to be. Friday night. Going to be in just doing this stuff. Updating, building lineups, writing articles about groups. Appreciate everybody hanging out. 14 people here hanging out. I know this is one that gets watched overnight. So does the other show. I appreciate everybody who's here just relaxing. Try and jump into the chat here, see what's going on. Josh says, I don't think Mahomes or Kelsey will be the highest owned at their position, both under 15%, in my opinion. That'd be great. That would absolutely be dynamite if they went a little bit under owned. And they're definitely expensive. The combo is definitely expensive. So, yeah, the lower owned that you get those guys, the better, because it's a great spot. Even when they're expensive, it's a great spot. Josh Gillum going Hoyer at 4.9, and it can fit plenty of studs. I did, when we were talking about that at the top, I did point out Hoyer on that quarterback board was the only guy below the Mayfield line, right? I drew the line there. So everybody down here, I was saying, out of all these guys, I think Hoyer's the most interesting. I just love the idea of getting that cheap access to stacks that include Devonta and Jacoby Myers plus Josh Jacobs. That's 3 premium skill players, or 2.5 premium skill players, 2 premium skill players and a really good skill player, however you want to slice it. So yeah, that one kind of does interest me. I think that's a pretty good call on the DK board at 49. 10th by point per dollar. 16th on FanDuel, unfortunately, because he costs 63 over there. Vic David Figueroa, what's up, Vic? Vic likes the Love Explosion game. That might not even be referring to DFS. Maybe he just likes games in which there's a little bit of a love explosion. But presumably he's talking about the Green Bay stack, which I also like. It's a good spot. I'll probably have too much of it. Ken Woodhouse is here. Josh is saying he hopes they take off defense and add another flex. I hope they bring back kickers. Jeremy Savage points out there used to be kickers. Kickers are too relevant to football to take them off of slates. I think they should be here. I actually succeeded with kickers. I thought that was advantageous to have kickers on the slates. I actually liked when they had kickers. But we move on. Beantown, 20-mile-an-hour wind forecast in Baltimore. Any concern? A little bit, sure. Maybe feeds the idea of, and I hadn't looked at the weather, so appreciate that. But maybe feeds just, even more The idea that if you're going to that Baltimore offense, you just kind of want some Lamar naked stacks, maybe some Lamar Mark Andrews, where you pick off those the short passes in the red zone that the wind won't impact as much. But yeah, for downfield passing, that certainly gets a little bit concerning. Probably feeds that narrative. But again, that was a game where two good defenses on both sides of that game. I don't really love getting to too much Baltimore against Detroit. I'm probably more enthusiastic about Detroit against Baltimore, oddly, even though they're a little bit better against the pass overall. I just like Jared Goff's passing ability with Amon-Ra, with Sam Laporta. But yeah, if there's that much wind, not that these guys have never seen wind before, I don't really put my thumb on the scales projection-wise for that. It's accounted for. Where I really where that comes in is whatever Vegas does with it. If Vegas gets concerned about it, so maybe this is a 45-point game on a clear day, and it's down to 43, or maybe we'll see it drop to 41.5 before game time. So whatever Vegas does with it takes care of that for me. But yeah, lurking in the back of my mind, if I've got a critical decision to make for one lineup and I say, all right, win game or not win game between quarterbacks that I otherwise consider equal, there is that. Lamar could certainly offset it with his rushing ability, though. The hell are we? We did the Rams. We did the Chargers. So let's talk Vegas. As I was just saying, Hoyer. It's not something you got to have a lot of faith in. He doesn't cost anything on the DK slate, where he ranks 10th by points per dollar. The last time Brian Hoyer threw 200 passes in a season was when he played 6 games for San Francisco in 2017. 200 passes is not a lot of pass attempts. It's 6 games worth. That was the most relevant sample, the most recent relevant sample that Hoyer's had. But we know that he can get out there, be a little bit effective. He came in when Jimmy G went out. He came in 6 of 10, 102 yards. No touchdowns, no picks, but reasonable. All he's got to be is reasonably effective. And he's got some great options to work with in Devontae Adams. Josh Jacobs out of the backfield. Tons and tons of volume for Jacobs. Jacoby Myers is having a very good season. I really like the options he's got to work with, and I love the DK price. And it's not like they're going up against a good defense. 30th ranked against the pass, 7.7 yards per pass attempt. That's tied with where we were looking at before. They're tied with the Chargers, who technically are listed as 31st. So there should be some opportunity here for Brian Hoyer to throw the ball a little bit, get it downfield to Devontae. As you pointed out, Michael Mayer, also their tight end, $2,700 on DK, extremely cheap. That helps the overall stack price. Stack ranks 8th for points on both sites, 15th on DK, 10th on FanDuel by point per dollar value, because you pick up a little bit of value. Devontae's cheaper on FanDuel against a higher cap than he is on DK. Jacobs more expensive, but is expensive on DK. So you pick up some odd value on the FanDuel slate with the skill players, where Hoyer's a extreme value on the DK slate. But yeah, I think we can go there. Mostly on DK when you get Hoyer involved. Probably better sourcing just skill players on FanDuel, but I think you can throw some darts at it. Just wish the point per dollar was a little bit better on FanDuel. But 13 touchdowns allowed by that defense so far this year, 267 yards a game through the air, only gaining 18.5% pressure and only 9 sacks this year. Second lowest on the board? Second lowest on the board. Behind the 5 sacks that the New York Giants have gotten. Oh, what a shock. Pathetic. 5 sacks in 6 games. 3 interceptions. They've got more interceptions than their quarterback has touchdown passes, though. They've got twice as many sacks as their quarterback has touchdown passes. We'll talk about him in a second. So yeah, Hoyer. That's reasonable. There's some opportunity baked into these numbers here. I think you can get there. As weird as that sounds. And I think it won't be that as popular. If Aiden O'Connell had gotten this spot, I think O'Connell would have been more popular than Hoyer probably ends up. Could be wrong. Maybe that value price piques people's interest. But yeah, I think I think people would be more inclined to go to the buzzy rookie than the guy who hasn't been relevant since at least 2017 and really never all that relevant. Speaking of not all that relevant, Mac Jones, really no interest at all. I probably won't take him out, but he at least finished the game last time. 24-33, 200 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Game before that, 12 of 22, 110 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It's really, really limited. If I'm taking anything from this offense, it's probably Ramondre Stevenson. And even that, I don't really love. He hasn't been great. They're going up against a defense that's a 31st ranked, 5.4 yards per rush attempt. That feeds maybe a little bit of upside for Ramondre. He projects out okay. He's not all that expensive. But, yeah, no real interest in the quarterback. Running back 12 on DK, 14th by point per dollar, 15 and 18th on FanDuel. Those are usable parts, but certainly nothing that is must-have there. Hasn't been the same running back as he was last year. So very, very, very limited interest in this New England offense. 40-point total, 8.5-point favorites on the Buffalo side, and realistically, this should probably be higher favorites than that. Danny Dimes, probably going to be back. Seems that way. I would prefer it if the Giants went with Tyrod Taylor and figured out how to get out of the Daniel Jones contract. Frame him for a crime. Drug him and put him on a plane to parts unknown. Put him next to Jimmy Hoffa under the field. I really don't care. He's just not good. Going up against the defense that ranks 26th in both categories, 4.6 yards per rush attempt, 7.2 yards per pass attempt. He'll have the opportunity to be good if he's out there at all. His one good game was the week 2 game against Arizona. 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception on 26 of 37. He had 9 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown on the ground that game as well. Every other week has been completely awful. He's looked totally inept, looked undeserving of an NFL job at all, let alone $40 million. The 2 touchdown passes he threw against Arizona in week 2 are the only 2 touchdown passes he's thrown all year. Last time out, 14 of 20 for 119 yards. No touchdowns, no interceptions against Miami. At least they didn't throw the ball away. Before that, 27 of 34, 203 yards, no interceptions. No touchdowns. 2 interceptions against Seattle. He's been really bad. Saquon is banged up. Darren Waller is banged up. Wan'Dale Robinson is banged up. They're all expected to play. This team's been terrible. That said, he projects out okay for the money, unfortunately. The Giants stack ranks 10th on the DK slate by points, 8th by points per dollar, 11th and 9th. I'm hoping this is another week where we get a minor adjustment in the line in Vegas that miraculously has a impact on the Daniel Jones projection and takes it down a little bit further, makes it a little bit more unplayable. Right now, just ranks here. It's not like he's busting through the top of the board, but he does climb to 7th by point per dollar on DK for 56, 11th by raw points, 12th by raw points on FanDuel, 11th by point per dollar. Easier to get away from him on FanDuel if the projection holds. A little bit more relevant on the DK slate. Could have a game. I mean, Washington's D has not been good. Division game, only a 38-point total. Washington favored by 2. No pride or anything like that on the line for the Giants. At home, everybody knows that they're an embarrassment. Just trying to neg the Giants into success here. But yeah, it's a really limited option. And he's got limited receivers. I do like Wan'Dale, and he's been the primary since coming back. Darren Waller's not having a great year. Saquon's been banged up all season. And you got Slayton, Hyatt, Hodgins, Paris Campbell. All these guys kind of suck. Don't get enough targets. They let everybody get out there and run some routes. They let everybody get out there and get some targets. But not one of them has really stepped up and been great. If the projection holds, I'll have a little, but not very much. No faith. No faith at all. We talked Baker. To reiterate, I like the spot, mostly because he's thrown to 2 really good receivers that I've succeeded with over time. Don't love the total. Don't love the defense they're going up against. But he was the line. He was the bottom of the quarterback pool for the guys that I'm planning on. Anybody Baker up is going to be more heavily involved. These guys down here are very limited to just dart throws. But really, these 3 guys are more of the dart throw caliber than everybody from Dobbs up. So it's really, there's 2 lines. Right? It's the yellow line and then the red line. Maybe I'll do this from now on. Any one of these guys, I'm fairly happy to see in a lineup, Sam Howell included. I like where Sam Howell's priced. I like the opportunity throwing against that Giants D. He's probably my least favorite out of that group. You could draw yet another line if you wanted to. With Goff and Stafford below him, you could say, like, that's... Well, actually, it would probably be... The way I did it for these guys, it would probably be on Herbert, not Howell. Whoops. All right, so if I had to create, like, tiers, I think it's my tier 1. Jordan Love's only here because of his price. And it's another spot where I'm kind of hoping that something happens. But I can't imagine anything that would happen to that line in Vegas that, given how bad Denver's been on defense, that's going to change this. So I'm just going to stride confidently into the slate with my pocket full of Jordan Love and hope that it works out. But, like, this is your tier 1s, your tier 2s, your tier 3s, and then just kind of your value darts. But Hoyer, if you could restructure it, I'd put Hoyer here and get him into that tier 3. But it's something like that, roughly, loosely like that. I think Howell is the last quarterback to talk about here. About an hour and a half in. It's not bad. I think that's about what these shows have been in the past. And it helps pick up the pace for tomorrow. Giants, 30th ranked against the run, 5.1 yards per rush attempt. Could be a good day for Brian Robinson. I don't know why I faded saying the name Robinson. Brian Robinson Jr. could have a good day. 27th ranked against the pass, though. Sam Howell could definitely have a good day. Howell hasn't been bad. Quietly the 5th most pass attempts in football. Rates pretty decently for statistical accuracy in a lot of advanced metrics. Last time out, 14 of 23, just 151 yards, but threw 3 touchdown passes. I'll take 153 yards and only 23 pass attempts if you're going to guarantee me 3 touchdown passes. That is a fair trade for a quarterback that's priced like this. He's really only had one messy game. Week 3 kind of skewed his totals. 4 interceptions and no touchdowns that week. 29 pass attempts completed, 19 of them, 170 yards. Otherwise, he's been pretty good. He had 2 games at between 290 and 300 yards and 1 game over 300 already. Not bad. Going up against a terrible defense and a terrible offense that's going to put their terrible defense on the field more often than they should be. That'll probably give Washington back the ball in excellent field position at least a couple times during this game. Like I said, Robinson could have a day. McLaurin and Dotson and Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas, I'm interested in shares of all of those guys. Giants are bad against tight ends. Logan Thomas is a pretty good tight end. Samuel's an effective slot receiver. These 2 guys are very talented. Plenty of downfield opportunities in this one. Washington ranks 9th on the DK slate by points on both sites. They rank 2nd by point per dollar as a stack on DK and 5th by point per dollar as a stack on the FanDuel slate. I'm uncomfortably interested in the Washington Commanders stack this week. If you go to it, I don't think you need to run back Giants, but they've certainly got enough cheapo receivers if you wanted to do it. So it makes it easy enough to do. Wandale very cheap. I would stick with your Wandales, your Slaytons, the guys who are just going to be out there getting a few more routes, a few more targets. Waller is certainly on that list, and Saquon obviously is on that list. But he's kind of expensive, especially for being a little bit banged up. Jake Swale says Rice is going to see an uptick. Yeah, I assume you're talking Rashee Rice. Oh, Watson on KC out was the note from Jeremy Savage. Did I have him in? Think we accounted for that. Yeah. So we've got him out. So that's included in the projection as it stands. I'll take another look, make sure I've got everybody where they should be on targets with him out. But yeah, certainly feeds the narrative. And he's been the more targeted guy over the last couple of weeks. He's been the kid that they've been wanting to get involved with Mahomes, and seems like they've got a decent connection. Adolis Garcia is hit by a pitch in the 8th inning of Game 5. Benches clear. Damn, Game 5 ALCS brawl, and I missed it. So that's basically, I think we talked about all these quarterbacks, guys. Mayfield, yes. Sam Howell, yes. Geno, Pickett, Danny Dimes, Mac Jones even. Brian Hoyer, Stafford, Herbert, Mahomes, Minshew, Love, yep, Goff, Russ, We've talked about all these guys already. PJ Walker. I hope it's Deshaun. I really do. That'd help my. It would also probably help my Superflex team. Who do I have in? Oh no, I'm all right. I have 2 in Geno in, so he probably wouldn't get the start anyway. But I just rather see Deshaun. I want to see that Cleveland team do well, given how well that defense is playing. Son of the arm wrestler will be interesting. But yeah, I think that's a good place to jump off. Hour and a half in. Felt like a good one. Thought we covered a lot of pretty decent ground here. We'll be back tomorrow, like I said, somewhere between 5 and 6:30 start time. I'll try and lean earlier so that we don't have to go till 10 p.m. We'll cover a ton of ground tomorrow. Get all the targets and the routes and yada, yada, yada together. We'll cover game by game, team by team, player by player, all that good stuff. Projections are going to be updated tonight. Groups article will be written for the morning. Stack rankings will be in the groups article. Full update will come through for the morning with the groups included. We'll do the show tomorrow afternoon. Everything will get updated. Everything will get updated again overnight, going into Sunday morning. The above below column will get written for Sunday morning. We should be pretty good. I think we've got an interesting slate on our hands, gang. A lot of directions this one could go. Should be a fun one. Fun to talk through tomorrow. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button so you know exactly what time that show's scheduled for tomorrow. I'll try and get it scheduled early in the day so you guys can plan. Don't like to tie up people's Saturdays with uncertainty. But with that in mind, good luck with whatever you're playing tonight. I don't think I have a single lineup in anything tonight, but maybe there's a late hockey slate or something like that I can jump into in DGen. But good luck out there with whatever you're doing. Have a great Friday night. I'll catch you on Saturday, gang. See you tomorrow.